how have general training needs changed over the last 5 years in your perspective?
It's a great question, and I think it's definitely fair to say that training has always been important as agency operators since the beginning of time. But there is definitely no more of an important time. There is such a premium put on training, and for a good reason, over the last 5 years. And I think this is due to many factors. I was just at Pennsylvania Home Care Association's Private Duty Summit 2 weeks ago, and the CEO of PHA, Terry Henning, was talking about a topic that's probably very near and dear to all of us providers attending today. And Terry was discussing that, 5-10 years ago, your agency was competing with other agencies in your market for caregivers, and that was traditional. Now, not only are you competing with other agencies, but you're competing with organizations such as Amazon, who are often able to start their newest employees at $18, $20, $25 per hour and offer benefit packages that most home care agencies just can't offer. So unfortunately, while we do have a number of caregivers moving to other careers and leaving the home care industry, there are still so many amazing professional caregivers where home care is their calling, it's their passion, and they are here to stay in the home care industry. And one thing that these experienced professionals are really demanding, they're really vocal about, is the need for increased training, is the need to be the best professional caregiver that they can be. So we have these professional caregivers who are demanding new trainings. And then at the same time, we have a changing dynamic workforce where, our agency likes to look at what other agencies are doing, whether it's in Philadelphia or across the country. And when we're looking at job postings on Indeed and seeing what other agencies are highlighting, we see phrases like no experience needed, we will train you. And this definitely wasn't the case 5 years ago or even 2 years ago. So with new caregivers entering the market, becoming professional caregivers for the first time, these individuals really need more training than your professional caregivers who have been seasoned professionals for years and years. So being able to offer extensive trainings, tracks for new caregivers is so important. And I'd say that just generally over the last 5 years, technology has improved so much for us home care agency operators, whether it's the EMR system that you're using or training systems that you're using, like In the Know, they have grown leaps and bounds from just 5-6 years ago. So, you don't want to be one of those agencies doing your own trainings in-house where you're like driving a horse and buggy and you're seeing other agencies driving past you in sports cars that are using In the Know. You really want to get with the times and provide the best tools to your caregivers.
Awesome. Thanks, Brett, for the knowledge there. Kyle, I know it's changed a lot for you. You were on the podcast and Home Care Live a couple of weeks ago, but excited to hear your response to this also.
Sure. And just to check, is the audio okay for me? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Okay, good. Well, yeah, I think to kind of piggyback on what Brett had mentioned, I just feel that, over the past 5 years in particular, caregivers have a lot more control over how they are trained. A lot of that has to do with the technology that he had mentioned, but instead of these mandatory trips into the office for specific training, I mean, now it is much more of a mobile work environment. So, essentially, it's become an environment where you're training caregivers where they are, where they live, and most importantly, on their own time. So it's just a much more flexible environment. And I think the pandemic, forced us to become more comfortable in a sense with some of these virtual options, which we're on right now. More so than the face-to-face. And so, I think we learned through the pandemic that we can perform training in these types of methods and actually be successful in them as well. But yeah, as Brett had mentioned about the technology, I think the technology is vastly improved. Not to say that the technology 5-6 years ago wasn't really helpful. I think it most certainly was, but you look at that technology 5 or 6 years ago, and then what they have all done to improve upon some of that existing technology, it's really helped home care companies like ours be successful. And I just kind of look at it, 5 years ago for our own organization in terms of how we were communicating training opportunities to our team of caregivers. I think back then it was just kind of a send out a mass text message or use your scheduling software to send out some type of a mass message to all of your caregivers. And it just felt a little bit clunky where, nowadays there's a lot more advancements where, we have an opportunity to go out to a social platform that our caregivers are all on. I or other members of our team can put together a video to explain some of the new training opportunities that we have. And so it's much more of a personal interaction and a much more personal dialogue between the two parties. But a lot of that has to do with that technology. And I personally continue to think that technology is just going to get better and better over the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Thanks, Kyle. Last but not least, Jeff, what about for you?
Yeah, so because I'm going last, I want to take my answer in a little bit different direction, and I would say that over the course of the last 5 years, because of technology, we don't see our caregivers as much. We're not seeing the whites of their eyes. That was only exacerbated by COVID-19. Very, very rarely are they having to come into the office because we've moved to direct deposits, so they're not picking up paychecks, or because of software, we're engaging them over the web. And I think that training in particular represents an opportunity for us to have that legitimate business reason to pull people into the office. And I think that the reason why that's important is because these caregivers are working oftentimes without a lot of interaction with their peers and opportunities to be able to dialogue and share best practices and so forth. So I would say that this conversation is really about training beyond compliance, and any of us that are operating in states that require training as part of a compliance as dictated by the state certainly need to have tools like In the Know, which I certainly do. But I would say that an evolving need is to create opportunities for more in-person engagement with your team. And I can't think of a better way to create that engagement than through training. I'll give you a quick example. One of the things that my organization does is we host skills fairs. And what we do is we go out to referral partners, like a Medicare certified home health agency, and ask for their therapy department to provide some in-person training to our caregivers on fall prevention or how to properly use a Hoyer or whatever. Even though our staff can provide that training, we still invite some of those folks from the community because ultimately that just strengthens our relationship with referral partners. And they see how we're investing into our caregivers. And then our caregivers love hearing from other industry experts and being able to move from room to room or station to station and learn things that are applicable in their daily life. And then if you combine that with contests and door prizes and some food and so forth, it starts to create some of that connectedness that I feel like we've lost a little bit because of the pandemic. So I think that one of the opportunities with training beyond just the compliance is to enhance the engagement that we can experience with our caregivers.